Welcome to my kitchen. Happy holidays, everybody. It's time to make noodle bake, which means there's a party around the corner. This is a great crowd pleaser. This was one of Mom's favorite when she wasn't sure how many people were going to show up. You can feed anywhere from, say, 10 to 15, depending on if they're big eaters or not. It's great with a salad, garlic bread, maybe a side dish of veggies, but it's a crowd pleaser for sure. And like all the best recipes, it starts with onions. Just about a cup and a half. Not too big of a dice, medium dice. I'm going to get them in the pan, get them going. A little bit of oil. You don't need a whole lot, especially if you have a nonstick pan. So I've got the oil in the pan. Start the pan out on high. Get them in. Let them get going, and then you can turn the burner down. But like I said, this recipe is nice and basic. It's basic flavors. I think that's why everybody likes it so much. Salt and pepper is the only thing you're putting in it spice-wise. You have the nice onion flavor, ground beef, cheddar cheese, and a nice plain sauce. Nothing fancy. But we're going to get our onions chopped up and in the pan. We're going to get them cooking. I like to have them cook just a little bit before I put the ground beef in. I just find that it helps with the texture. It's going to bake in the oven. Sometimes the onions take a little bit longer. That's why I like to do them first. Some people do everything all together. They throw the beef in, then throw the onions in. But I like to get a little bit of color on the onions first. This was Mom's favorite recipe, really. She had this for Christmas, New Year's, Easter, even sometimes in the middle of the summer, because it made such a big amount and just made it really easy to feed a crowd. If you like more onions, you can definitely put more onions in there if you'd like. This recipe is forgiving. You don't have to be exact. You don't have quite a cup and a half of onions, that would work too. Spread the oil around, get them in. And just a little bit of salt and pepper on the onions. Get those in there. I do like to try to get a little bit of color on my onions, just because it helps bring out the sugar of the onions a little bit. And then we're going to open our meat. That's 2 pounds of ground beef. I used the 20/80 or 80/20, however you want to say it. And then this one was the step down from that. It is a little bit cheaper. So if you're watching your budget, if you want to use that, that's fine. And there, salt and pepper it real good. And just find that it's easier to do it this way. And you're waiting for your onions to cook. That, like I said, there aren't many steps in this recipe. It's very simple. It takes about maybe a half an hour to get it to come together. Get our sauce open. That's the ragu traditional sauce. One of the few times I use a jarred sauce. And we'll give onions a stir. Break them up a little bit. And turn the burner down. I like to start the burner on high just because it shorter amount of time to get it to come up to temperature. Give them a good stir around. Like I said, this is great to have with some garlic bread, salad. It really does make a complete meal. And we'll start to break up the ground beef. When you have so much, it makes it a little bit easier if you can get it broken up beforehand. Just moving it over there so I have a little bit more room. Break up those pieces. And you're not moving it around in the pan so much. And when you put it in, you can put it in, let it sit so it does get a little brown on there. Because once you put the ground beef in, If you put it in and you don't move it, it'll get nice and brown. Once you start moving it around is when all the juices come out and it's harder to get it brown. And we could start breaking up this package. The recipe calls for 2 pounds. I think this ended up being like 2¼ pounds altogether. And move the onions out of the way, and then that way the beef makes it right into the pan. Try to get it in there and not move it around too much once we get it in. And that way we can get a nice brown on it. Like I said, this recipe is very basic, simple flavors, easy to make, and it does feed a lot of people. But it just works. It's an older recipe. Mom got it from one of her encyclopedia recipe books. I think they were from the 1960s or something like that. It is not Italian. It is considered a Spanish recipe. I think because it doesn't have a lot of spices in it. Now, this is something you have to be careful with. You have to check your measurements. The noodles that I got, they're extra fine egg noodles. And fortunately, I got more than one bag because you need a pound of noodles. And what I got was only 11-ounce bags. So I ended up using 1½ bags, but I did measure it out. It's nice if you have a kitchen scale. They come in very handy. But I measured the noodles out while I was waiting for the meat to cook. You need to be careful nowadays. You need to really check your packages. And there's our ground beef and onions cooking away. Now, you can drain it if you'd like. I like the extra moisture in there because there's a lot of flavor in there. Now, there is some fat in there too, but there is a lot of flavor in there. So I do like to keep that juice. Break up the bigger pieces. And you want to make sure that you cook this until it's not pink anymore. Get our 1 jar of sauce in there. Now, my skillet is a 14-inch skillet. I probably could have used a little bigger pan if I had one, but I didn't. So I decided to put the 1 jar in and get it stirred up while there was still room in the pan to move it around. And you want to stir it up pretty good because you want to get that juice that's in there mixed in with the sauce. And this doesn't have to cook afterwards. You just want it. You want the sauce mixed in with the meat really well. Add a little, mix it up a little more. And turn the burner off. Like I said, it doesn't need to cook anymore. It can stay on the burner. Let it heat up. And now we're on to the noodles. Get the water on, get that to boil. Remember to put salt in your water. I used about a good tablespoon of salt. I like to have my water nice and salty because that's how your noodles get the flavor. And we'll get our cheese grated. It's a pound of cheese. I've got 2 8-ounce packages, which is nice because I do like to grate them and keep them separate because that way you can, when you're building this, you can keep track of how much cheese you're putting in the layers. And I do like to grate my cheese. If you don't want to grate your cheese, that's fine. But I find that when you grate your cheese, that cheese melts a little bit differently than the ones that are pre-grated. Watch your fingers. Take your time. You got no rush here. Like I said, we're just waiting for the water to boil. If you would like to use a mixture of cheeses, that would probably work too. You know, maybe you have some other cheese in the refrigerator, maybe a pepper jack cheese. That would be nice. Would make it a little bit of spice in there. There we go. Our cheese is all done. And it hardly took any time. That's one of those relaxing things that you can do in the kitchen. Little zen moment, grating cheese. And see, our water's ready. As long as it's almost to the point of a rolling boil, I think you're good. Because these noodles are so small, you want the water to be moving around quite a bit before you put them in. It helps keep them separated. They don't take long to cook. Maybe 6 or 7 minutes. See, we're almost to a rolling boil. Get our noodles in. And then you want to give them a good stir to make sure that they're all separated. I find that little pasta spoon is really great to help you spread it out when we get to the point where we're taking them out and layering them. It makes it much easier to get a nice even layer, and it helps break it up while they're still cooking. And when they're done, you can drain them. And don't rinse your noodles. You want them to be a little bit dry, and if you just pour them into the colander, let them strain, let the water come off of them. Because they're still hot, they'll start to dry out just a little bit. And that's what you want, because you want them to absorb the sauce as soon as you put it on there. And we'll get things in position to start making our layers. Now I have Mom's noodle bake pan. It's one of those nice old dishes. It is a round pan with a sloped edge. It's 15 inches round. And things just fit in there perfectly. Now, because it has a sloped edge, when I put the noodles in that bottom layer, you want to use just a little bit less than half. Because of the sloped edge, the bottom layer is going to be a little bit smaller than your top layer. So to make sure that things work out evenly, you want to use just a little bit less than half of your noodles. Get the noodles in there, spread them out. You want to try to keep it as even as possible. And see what I mean? That spoon really works well at trying to get them spread out evenly. If you have a smaller pan and you want to make more layers, that's fine, but try to keep things even. And just like with the noodles, I'm going to use a little less than half of the sauce. Now, somebody in your family likes nice little crispy bits. You can make sure that you don't pull the sauce all the way out to the edge. And when it's cooking, those little noodles will get nice and crispy. They're my daughter's favorite. She likes the little crispy bits around the edges. And now we'll get the cheese on, and the same with the cheese. A nice even layer of cheese. I'm going to use a little bit less than half the cheese. And the rest of the noodles will go on top. Like I said, this is a recipe that doesn't require great cooking skills. You just need to take your time. It's not a souffle or anything like that. It's a great dish for beginners. And it's very impressive when it comes out of the oven. And oh, does the house smell so good when it's cooking. Makes great leftovers too. The leftovers are great if you heat them up in the pan on the stove and get little crispy bits on the bottom. Or if you just want to heat them up in the microwave, they're good from the microwave too. And here's the rest of the sauce that wouldn't fit in the pan before. Get that in there. Scrape the jar out. I don't like to be wasteful. I like to try to get out as much as I can. Give that a stir. Just to mix in that last little bit. Like I said, if you have a big enough pan to get it all in there at once, that's great. Got to work with what you have. And just get this spread on top. Sitting here, I'm getting hungry watching this. This is great. This is going to be my Christmas dinner. And now the rest of our cheese. I want a nice thick layer of cheese on the top. And in she goes. I'll go in the oven for an hour at 350 degrees. And I like to check it halfway through just to make sure everything's cooking correctly, nothing's burning, it hasn't spilled over at all. And after your house smells absolutely wonderful, she's all done. Comes out bubbly. Oh, it's just wonderful. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy this recipe and I hope you give it a try. Happy holidays, everybody. Don't forget to like and subscribe.